Norfolk Business Show with Danny Snelling. Sponsored by MT Comms.
Okay, Dave Claydon, thank you for joining me, mate.
Thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Tell us all what you get up to and what you do. I know what you do because you've recently done me, if that makes any sense. But
so what do? I do a lot of health and safety bits and pieces. That's the crux of our business. We keep people safe, make sure they go home at the end of the day. And we provide all the training that underpins the health and safety requirements that every business requires and needs. It's good fun. It's not a subject that people like to approach because it's the taboo of all the subjects. But in business, every business needs health and safety in some description. So we tackle it head on.
It is one of those things which is just an annoyance to most business owners, and you think, I'm never going to need this or I'm never going to need that, and it's just an expensive thing that we don't need. Actually, it's not that expensive, but it is just almost like an annoying little fly that you've got to swat, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
But having said that, I'm sure you're going to tell me loads of examples of why you need this sort of stuff. And,
absolutely.
And it's not just about the first aid side of things, it's the full sort of shebang and the systems and processes.
It's about keeping everyone safe.
Yeah.
And if you can't, how can you make the best out of a bad situation?
And for a business owner, it's more so to keep you safe financially from big claims and the like. Okay, so how long have you been doing this, and where did it all begin? No, let's not. Well, how long has this business been? How long has it
been? 10 years we've been going.
Yeah.
My wife started it, doing it very much in the social care settings and making sure that compliance in regulatory training and standards were there, which sort of moved into sort of working with some large insurance underwriters. That in itself brought along the health and safety element, which in the care sector is massive. There's so much you've got to comply with and everything else. And then business was booming. I was in the construction industry back as I was, and it was due to someone else causing me to have an accident that I ended up joining her and trying to stop people having similar situations that I went through. And keeping people safe out there, because it's not always the individuals that are not being safe, it's other factors which need to be looked into. So we built a nice business on underpinning everything that organisations need, from auditing and regular inspections, educating people what they need to do to eventually get to a point where everyone goes home with all their toes, fingers and everything else to see their loved ones at the end of the day, which is, we work hard to look after them and support them, or just have a nice time ourselves. If you don't make it there, what's it been worth?
Can I ask what the accident you had was? Or?
So it was a ladder that actually snapped on me, which ruptured my Achilles. And it was all sort of at the time of COVID and organisation we were working with going under. So it was a big calamity, and I was actually booted up for nearly 18 months in the end, which was a long period not to be able to do your work. And I think more than it was difficult to try and get the organisation going, because literally everyone was not working, and as a self-employed small organisation, it's a tough period to get through. So we had a long chat. I'd done a lot of admin for the good lady, realised my admin skills weren't too bad, and then realised that actually when you research people in the industry having accidents, it's quite a high statistic on people having incidents that stop people from doing their day-to-day job. So as much as we can do what we can do, we're only sort of a small organisation at the moment, we doing our best to stop people having that similar accident that stops them doing what they need to do, which fundamentally could lead to people losing their houses, family breakups because of stress and everything else. So if we can put measures in place to stop that from happening, that's where we go with it. So I now do an awful lot. In the last 5 years, the whole organisation has turned round from more of a training support consultancy background to very heavy on the health and safety, underpinning all the health and safety measures that are required, and then bringing in the training that supports that with the likes, like you say, with the first aid training, health and safety training, and all the other bits and pieces to keep everyone compliant and with all their toes and digits.
Yeah. So tell me a bit about the process. You know, I'm sure it changes massively depending on the size of the business, the shape of it. But you know, suppose, I don't know, an average business of say 10 office users, office staff. You know, they'll contact you and say, look, what do we need?
Absolutely.
And I guess you go in and assess first of all.
Absolutely. So you're absolutely right. There is a sort of a cut-off of 5 members of staff where you have the same bits and pieces in place. We now have to start documenting and evidencing what we do. So having policies written down in a digital form, still okay, but having it available to all the staff, making sure that the staff, the premises, if they've got premises, have a fire risk assessment to make sure that everything's been measured. We check that maintenance contracts and the right competent people are in place to help them, you know, be safe.
Sorry to interject, but that you mentioned the 5. So below 5, you don't need this
Below
legally,
5 members of staff, you have to have the information available, i.e. in your head, really.
Right.
But it's not a legal requirement to write it down. So I would still advise, even, you know, I was at one point a one-man band, so to speak, and I would still actually write down my policies because it's very easy to actually forget everything that you've decided you need for your business. However, there is a caveat in the law that says, as long as you're aware of it and you've got it all written down in your head, you know, sort of, it's all there, you're compliant. As long as you've got something to say that you're doing it. My experience has always been, it's very difficult to evidence something in your head. So if everyone writes it down or has something in place to write it down, then you're okay. If something
Presumably
worse,
you still have to make sure the buildings, you know, if you're an office of 3 or 4,
you'd still need certain elements compliant.
Yeah.
When it comes to the office type of scenario, you need to make sure that fire is the key thing that, you know, I find in many places I visit. If I had to undertake a fire risk assessment, even if there's just 2 people in the office, places like a good quality fire alarm that's maintained, extinguishers if needed, the evacuation is of a standard that's deemed acceptable. What happens if you have a client with a disability? How are you going to help someone evacuate? Who's responsible for that evacuation? So we with that type of scenario, we would then incorporate doing fire marshal training so that we can educate the staff what to do in the event of a fire and how someone, you know, various members, however big or small the organisation is, from sort of 1 to 20 sort of people, could be sort of fire marshals in a large organisation, but it's that people take responsibility of maybe their floors or their little section to make sure that if visitors are there that may have a disability, what it looks like to get that person out nice and safely. So you would then underpin that with documentation and processes like PEEPs and JEEPs, which will basically allow you to think of people like in wheelchairs and what the evacuation process would look like. But that needs to be documented so you've got everything in place and also made as a across the board state in a similar matter that if you're away on holiday, the process still is undertaken the same way and no one's going to be injured as a result of something you've done.
And is that the same with first aid as well? So
Absolutely.
It's not just about the compliance, it's first aid as well.
Yeah, so with the first aid type of things, it's having the right amount of people there. So if you're thinking about roster days off, annual leave, just your general structure of the business, it could be that you're on multiple floors and actually want first aid cover on each floor. If someone leaves the business, does that leave your business vulnerable because you've got no one covering it? So having a good coverage of, you know, around 20% of people first aid trained within the organisation to cover that absence, because it's, if someone goes off sick, someone could easily be on annual leave and then you still need people to cover in the event of an incident, and then it's educating everyone how to record that information of the accident and incident. And then you've got on top of that health and safety auditing to make sure the business is compliant. It's not just about whether the doors are fire resistant and meet the regulations, it's about have you got trailing leads, are you overloading sockets which could cause a fire, DSE assessments, making sure your computer screens and everything is set up so that ergonomically you're going to do less injury to yourself using it over long periods of time, you know, monitoring regular breaks, looking at eye tests, to making sure that your health and safety is from top to toe. Everything that you have needs to be put in place to look after
so many
you.
questions now are popping into my head, like, well, what about if they work from home, or what about if this happens, or what about if, have you got to police the fact that you can't have 2 first aiders if there's only 2 on holiday at the same time, all these sorts of things.
It's a tough game, and there's going to be situations where someone is on holiday and then someone goes sick, and if it's a small organisation, that could happen. It's one of those things. What I would then say is that needs to be reviewed. So if we had an audit, which I could work with a company with, because we do lots of retainer packages where I'm regularly part of the organisation, or Linda's part of the organisation, and what we find is if someone said, well, just a question, we had this situation, so-and-so went on holiday, or 2 people went on holiday, someone was sick, we actually found out we had no first aiders. Luckily nothing went wrong, but there's no one there. What do you think we should do? We were then looking to topping up that first aid requirement, and then understanding how we could sort of reduce the likelihood of that ever happening again.
Yeah, well, it is just a minefield. I'm getting more questions than I am answers. But yeah, I can see how they, that your services are needed for almost every degree and angle. But touching on the home working, how is that policed, and how do most businesses deal with that challenge? Because obviously you haven't got to, I guess, as a business owner, worry about their workplace.
To a point.
I'm sure you're going to tell me they've got to worry about the monitors and the...
Absolutely. So the workplace at home, under agile working contracts and everything else, you do have to think about people's home working and their well-being. You've got to take that into account because people work on their own. We found in COVID that there was a lot of mental health concerns with people working on their own without that interaction. And I had it with a company only last week, actually, who have that agile working setup. And yes, you do need to check that the ergonomics of their home life is to a point where they can do their job without any injuries. So you still need a home DSE assessment. And that comes with its challenges, because it may be the employee doesn't want their employer to actually come to their place of home, their home, fundamentally. It's okay when it's their place of work, but when it's their home, it's a different kettle of fish. And there are other hazards, because everyone's home life is different. It may be that you're in a cramped 1-bed apartment and you're working from home, and actually health and safety is seriously dangerous. Or you may have a luxury of your own office and everything else that runs with it. And then you need to think of, how does pets play a part if pets are at home and the doorbell suddenly goes because actually some of your work is being delivered and you get up and trip over the dog, cat, whatever it may be. So there's lots of things to consider. And if it is someone that maybe uses their dining room table for working with, then is that the right place? And can you separate work from your home life? So we do a lot of work with people that work from home to sort of encourage them packing their stuff away, walking around the block, coming back to home and doing the same thing in the morning, coming to work where everything's set up for you. But then, as a business, you are responsible for making sure your staff, even though they're working at home, are still safe and ergonomically sound.
Interesting. I always thought, these businesses are saving money and saving, issues and other things to think about by getting everyone to work at home, but it sounds like it's even more.
There can be more, because I think what we tend to do when it comes to people working from home is we give them a laptop, maybe a mobile, and they're working with it, probably on the sofa with their neck crunched down, and they, before you know it, there's a claim for repetitive strain injury because they're working in with poor postures. So actually giving them a screen that is fitted correctly and a decent chair, it doesn't have to cost the earth, that just allows them to have a really good ergonomic setup, will keep them working far longer. But you've got a lot to think about.
Yeah, I mean, is it actually, is the onus on the business to actually offer these chairs?
Absolutely, yeah. So having an ergonomic setup at home is actually something that should be set up with a responsible, organisation, 100%. And that could just be if it's a reasonable size laptop, just having a riser screen to put the laptop on top so that the screen level's right and a separate keyboard and mouse. It may not have to be a massive office setup. But ask the questions, what have you got at home? Yeah. Is it just you're working off a sofa because you haven't got a table? And there could be some other things that we need to put in place. And it may be that actually working from home is not a suitable option.
Or in that example, it's not because your home isn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, that's obviously office workers and stuff. Obviously, you get involved in the more manual labour, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Side of it.
My bread and butter.
And I'm sure you've got lots of horror stories you can tell us. But
Yeah.
Obviously, it's your job to try and avoid those. How do you deal with, say, manufacturing and things like that? Obviously, it's different.
Yeah, manufacturing is a tough one because ideally you want to be there all the time, overseeing things. So what I do with some of my clients in the manufacturing world is I work very closely with the health and safety supervisory support team, and it's about asking the questions and checking the due diligence of those people. Have they undertaken the checks? Is there particular things that they're uncomfortable about? Because that's what you find where people have accidents. There'll be an individual who actually, someone may be a little bit uncomfortable with approaching, or they've been thrown into a role of responsibility, and it's like, how actually do I undertake this, keeping people safe? Because everyone just says, look, go away, we've done this for years. And there are a lot of people very much set in their ways, as you can imagine. And they believe that they know best. And unfortunately, with today's safer world, and it is a safer world compared to sort of years ago, I think that we forget that technology and processes and procedures have come a long way, and we found out ways that actually we can work a lot safer. And by working safer, we're keeping everyone at work, so there's no lost time incidents for your employers and it is a big expense to lose a member of staff. You may have to bring people in, which costs money. You may have to pay them sick leave, and the costs are really, really high. So keeping everyone on the shop floor, so to speak, is crucial. And things like just cleaning regimes, regular testing of fire systems, ventilation systems. People forget about the ventilation. And I go into some places and you're sort of overcome by fumes. And everyone's like, that's fine, you get used to it after a while. And actually, that's not the answer. The answer is, let's maintain the ventilation system and get rid of all these bad odours and things that potentially could cause you health risks.
I remember when I started my career, I was in manufacturing, and it was almost like bravado, wasn't it, to just sort of do dangerous things, and take shortcuts, and this is how you do it, and it was very much a different world back then. But I saw limbs hanging off regularly, and
we've had a few of those,
and quite a few chunks taken out of people, and burns. Lots of burns.
And I think something else that sort of goes with that, people that are familiar of a location, to a point, will work safely as best they can. But if you've got contractors coming in to do anything in the business that are unfamiliar, they may cause an issue unknowingly by leaving something out of the way, uncordoned in their area. So there's a massive part to play on the employer to get the right people in to do those tasks, make sure they're competent in what they do, and you do that by undergoing checks, and that's something I help companies with as well.
Do you get involved when there's an issue, when there's something happen, and you've got to investigate?
Indeed, we've had a few cases which, thankfully, we have had one life lost, which we've investigated many moons ago, and we've had various injuries that have gone on. On a positive note, because I have worked closely with the Health and Safety Executive, HSE, which is not the people you really want to visit your organisation. If there are things that can be pulled up, they have a really, really good job to do, i.e. keeping people safe, and I'm there to sort of make sure that everything's in place. So if the HSE visit, there's no questions asked. But in the event of an incident or something where I may have to investigate, then there's a lot of process put in place there. So there'll be a full investigation. It's getting statements of everybody, and it's pulling all the information together to find out, could that incident have been avoided? And if it could, why didn't that happen? Now, sometimes it's not been risk assessed properly, in which case then we need to look at risk assessing tasks, and that would probably end up being risk assessing as much of the processing within the whole organisation and just the tasks that went wrong. And then it's doing your due diligence really, and getting the documentation, getting your policies, getting responsibility. Obviously, we need to make sure the individual is looked after as well, and that's another thing under the health and safety guys, that we have to make sure that organisations now look after that individual, put the right documentation in place, offer support and everything else. And that's, for some organisations, that's costly, and it's a hard one to do. So again, putting our services in place earlier to stop the incident from happening. And sometimes you can have freak accidents that happen, and we've had that where there was a gust of wind blowing, jacket flew, which probably should have been done up, but it's got caught in a device, and then someone's got sucked into a machine. So things can happen like that, or someone just catches a controller, which causes a crane to drop. And I've had that. And it's lots of different things going on, but it's like people understanding, where's the emergency switch off? Maybe doing some tests of using that as a device. Like we'll do a case where I'm going to shout out, someone's stuck. How do you quickly react to that? What do you do? Because if you don't use it day to day, you forget it's there.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So it's keeping that constant safety measures in place all the time. But manufacturing is a tough one. There's a lot of people there. The machinery is loud, so you need to protect your ears. Wearing ear defenders reduces people's awareness sometimes of what's going on. Then you may have goggles on. Are they of good quality? The amount I've seen that are scratched to a point where I'm surprised they can see what they're doing is quite high. But business owners have a responsibility to provide good quality PPE. And that's where we help.
I mean, you touched on the fact, some people just don't like to change, or some people are more stubborn. But I mean, a specific case at the moment, we've just installed CCTV in a welding firm because they've had 2 recent, literally limbs cut off.
Oh wow!
And they're policing it by watching the CCTV all day long, employing someone just to watch the CCTV to find these times when they do take shortcuts.
Yeah.
And apparently it was just holding an angle grinder with one hand, and yeah.
Yeah, easy happens.
But how do you convince someone that is stubborn? Do you I mean, obviously you can discipline them, but if they keep doing it repetitively, and where does the liability?
I think a good HR team comes into play at this point.
Yeah, I'm sure they look.
Yeah,
I mean, it's more. Where does the responsibility come off the employer and onto the...
It's protecting yourself with well-documented meetings. And it's going to come down to a disciplinary, but it's documenting it well, conducting it well. That's actually why I mentioned a good HR team, because they'll make sure that there's nothing missed. It could be that for that person's safety, they have to be dismissed, which, if they're one of your most experienced team, is a big dent to the organisation, but actually you're going to make sure that they go home. And with everything intact. And I know I say that a lot, but that is my golden, we've hit today because everyone's gone home with everything intact. There might be the odd strain or sprain, but I don't want a digit lost or a hand or worse than a death. So if someone is, believing that they know best, then I would rather say to them, do you know what, you don't. How many times you're so lucky not to have hurt yourself, you're not listening, you're not taking advice. We've gone down a legal road with the HR. We know exactly where, our point starts as an organisation. And as much as we're going to really miss your skill set and everything else, I can't afford you to have an accident or even worse. And it could be that someone knows the family as well. And there's a lot of strain on the organisation to sort of go, look, I know we're sort of friends out of work or whatever, but your husband's not complying. Sometimes actually that might work. Because the wife will do a clip around here, you do what you're told at work. I'm not saying that's the road everyone's got to go down, but at the end of the day, I'd rather say to someone, you're sacked because you're non-compliant and I need you to be safe. And the safety of everybody else as well.
So that's sort of touched on what you do, I guess, but let's find out more about Dave and Linda as well. You say Linda started the business, but
she did.
Perhaps roll back in time, but you're not a local lad, are you, originally?
No. I've been here over 20 years now, so...
Pass for local, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm nearly there. I've nearly got the passport. So, I love it. We actually came up for... my daughter done a secondary education in Norfolk, and we decided to actually follow her up. We're Harlow born and bred, both of us. Norfolk's a nicer area than Harlow, so if anyone's watching from Harlow, but Norfolk's a lovely place. And we brought our family up, and we settled down here really, really quickly. The people are lovely. As I say, we nearly got the passport, so it's really going well. And to be honest with you, the hustle and bustle of London, the traffic and everything else, because I do a lot of work in London still. This is far better way of life. So we moved up. I came up with BT. I was still working for at the time. I was an operations manager and looking after at its height 36 engineers. And a big element of that, which people don't realise, is where the skill set sort of started, I believe, is health and safety. So I've done a lot of the training for sort of flat roof training, pole climbing. I helped me and some other people set up a training school for BT engineers, learning the ropes. And, we've done everything. And I was there for 22 years. Much enjoyed, but I got to a point where I wanted to do a bit more. We left BT, stayed in Norfolk and started an electrical company, which was going really, really well. We had engineers working for us, and it really was the element of COVID, trying to get people work, companies who you're doing big contracts for and everything else. And then, these things happen. But when you think of electrical contractors, and the same is with gas companies, if you're an organisation that has to be governed by an organisation, so you're Part P, and you're maybe with a company like NAPIT or NIC, you have to do regulatory reviews with those organisations. And they do check things like, have you got health and safety? Have you got policies in place? What's your procedures like for doing X, Y, and Z? How does health and safety look for your business? So you do, even as we sort of touched on earlier with the one-man bands, you have to have these things in place. And you may get asked questions by these people, and they will check your competencies on whether you actually know what you're talking about or not. We find more and more people with legislation changes are using us, even as the one-man bands, because companies are now saying, I need a risk assessment of what you're going to do and a method statement on how you're going to do it. And if there's any products that come under the cost regulation, we need to know what the data and the health and safety sheets look like. Does all your team understand it? Have we signed it all off? So I support companies produce those documentations as well for organisations moving forward, like I had to when I was an electrical contractor.
Yeah.
So having done all that and actually realising, even as a small electrical contractor, the health and safety is seriously paramount. You could electrocute yourself, you could do so many things. Yeah. And then when you're on a building site, it's everyone else around you that's doing things. And we've had jobs where scaffolding moved and it's like, well, what's going on? Got scat tag on it. And you would think, look, companies like, that should be okay. Turns out that someone across the road had actually taken a pole out to do some work on their car because they needed a long pole to brace and do some body work, which actually the stability of the whole scaffold then become compromised. So there are little things like that you need to consider. So even with a scat tag, you do a little bit of due diligence. If it doesn't feel right, do you know what? Get the company out there to recheck it. I'd say the majority of scaffolders are quite happy with that, and they know this stuff goes on, unfortunately. So then when it comes to working with Linda, and Linda's background has always been in with social care in one sort of wide. We met at BT, funny enough. She was very much giving support to customers. We met in the shops, which was a trial sort of thing that BT done back in the good glory days. And what was really good about us, we've worked together then. We've worked together in various guises because although I had my own electrical company, she was, is involved with it.
Right. Yeah.
When she left BT, she went very much into the social care sector, looking after people. She set up groups within the drug and alcohol service. What she does is absolutely amazing. But the health and safety risks behind that are really, really out there because you've got to think of vulnerability. So what she's actually gone through has helped us develop ways of working for people that will meet customers and work out of hours. And what's the duty of care process? How do you let someone know you've got to site? How do you know when you've finished site? Because things can go wrong when you're in someone else's house very quickly, as we found out when Linda was doing that sort of work. It was a case of let me know when you're coming home. We had signals on certain rings that she'd done. If there was a problem, I always knew where she was. And if there was something serious, I'd just call the police to go and visit and try and get there myself, which obviously you want the professionals to deal with that ideally. All these experiences that we've had, we've brought into our business. And that's why we get a lot of real good praise, from people that we work with, be it a training session or whatever. I've worked in quite a lot of different industries. I left school, I was a hairdresser. So you'd never know today, but that has its issues as well. So there's so much that you learn through life, and then we got to a point where I want to hand some of these experiences that we've gone through back in a health and safety manner that keeps people safe. And this is where we are today. So Lynn does lots of regulatory visits with the care sectors, from children and adults. So helping people in the younger groups with Ofsted requirements, Ofsted regular Reg 44 training sessions and audit sessions, and then I can go in there and do like first aid session training, maybe a fire risk assessment of a home, a health and safety audit at home, because these are the things that Ofsted require of them. And the same with CQC in the older services. So we do all the support there, and we both work together in those guises. And it works really, really well. We have some great partnership with alarm companies, because the alarm companies will do what they do best. They can do the planning, they install, they maintain, but they may not be skilled to do the risk assessment part of it, which is where we support people. So we've got all of that. We've gone through an awful lot of re-qualifying with all of our
I can imagine
required qualifications.
That's continuous, isn't it?
Yeah, and what tends to happen, we found at the beginning of this year that a lot of things changed and we had to get re-qualified. So especially with the fire, after the Grenfell, the fire safety order changed, and there's lots of retraining and people want a certain qualification out of you now. So we've gone through all of that pain, and to a benefit where we've come out of it, and you do see different things of it. But there's such a call for it now from insurance companies, and it's a bit like the good old-fashioned PAT test question. Do I need PAT testing? Don't I need PAT testing? Legally, you could say you don't, but the insurance company may say you do. Otherwise, in the event of electrical fault, your insurance will be null and void if you hadn't done the due diligence to at least yearly check the compliance of your electrical equipment and take out of service anything that's failing. So that's why part of our health and safety audit, they're the things we do look at. Luckily with my background of electrical side of things, I can see very quickly if things are good, bad, or ugly. I've got a reasonable background of plumbing and heating, so I can understand where that comes from. So when it comes to those things like, I can see immediately there's no stickers, and you're saying about people working from home. People bring their home stuff to work sometimes, and that may not be PAT tested, and it's how you sort of, as an organisation, put something in place to take care of that. They're little things, but they sort of comes quite a lot.
So presumably it was Linda that started the business. What I'm always interested in is what made you or her take that initial leap. I think most of our listeners are always interested in that element of it, and that personal mindset of how you done it.
I think there's an element of
obviously with you starting the electrical business then
funny enough, we started almost the same time, so she started that as I started the electrical. I think there's almost a frustration. You can work for companies and you can believe that there are things that could be done better, but you don't have a lot of scope to put that in place yourself. So for us, where we felt that we could really offer a service that people, it's not a case of going in somewhere, for example, and saying, you're doing that wrong, and walking out. Because what are they going to do? How are they going to work with it? We're going to say, look, actually, legally that's wrong, but let's look at the bigger picture. You have to get to that point. How do you get to that point? That's what we found that we couldn't do working for other companies. You couldn't take the time because everything's driven by stats and figures, and you've got to see 6 clients today and everything else. So what we prefer to do is say, look, you know what, let's work with you as a client on our own back. We depict our timescales, and we will put in place, it could be a retainer package, for example, so we'll constantly work with you. Now luckily we've got Zoom, things like that, which make it even easier. But we'll say, what needs to be done is, yes, you're not meeting regulation, but let's get to regulation. How can we get to it without putting anyone's life in danger or anything in a way that's going to cause harm? And that's how we really decided we've got to do it ourselves on our own steam. Because with all the best will in the world, some of these large organisations that do what we do, and I've got experience with companies. In fact, I had a company, obviously we remain nameless, who wanted me to work with them. And when I asked how they did their fire risk assessment, it was virtually. Now I'm trying to understand how I can do a virtual fire risk assessment when you've got to see the building.
Yeah, of course.
Now, if that's going on, I couldn't work for a company like that. So the only way to get it how I want to do it, i.e. what I believe to be the best and safest method, is to do it ourselves. So obviously Linda started the business. She said, with all this health and safety you've done in your life, now you've got a boot on your foot, you've done some admin, you've got a flavour of what I'm doing, although I did know anyway. Why don't you just join me? And we've worked together before. It worked really, really well. She's a great girl to work with. And it's something which people say, how can you work with your wife, especially if your office is at home as well? Because, just in each other's face, but it's really easy, thankfully. She is a great person. If I'm stuck, I can bounce ideas off. If she's stuck, she can bounce ideas off me. We've got our admin team as well, so it worked really, really well. And we've partnered with an HR company because we want to deliver the health and safety HR thing that some of these big organisations offer at a very big cost, badly in my eyes. And I know they'll probably, have an argument to that, but from my experience, you need to speak and see people, the same person, get the familiarity of the organisation. What I tend to find when I read reports, you get someone coming in and they do their job well, they'll find faults, and then the next time there's a visit, it'll be a different person. It's unfamiliar with the business. So they're still trying to get to grips, and then you don't get the nitty-gritty of what actually needs to be dealt with. So with the amazing people that we work with, we can go in there. We've got, I can go into some of my manufacturing companies now, and they go, "Morning, Dave. Have you signed in?" And it's just, as much as it's a bit of a standing joke.
I did sign you in. Well, I'm not signing you in, but yeah.
Yeah, we moved
put you on the board. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
But it's funny that because I've got that relationship now, if I find something wrong, I'll say, "Come on, guys, you know the score. I'm here." I find things are actually moving forward. And when I speak to the owners of these organisations, they actually say to me that it is so different now because people do respect that you've got a job. I can get on with my job, and you come in on a regular basis, and people know that if I've said it, it's got to happen. There's got to be the odd occasion it doesn't. We'll talk to people in that way, but on the whole, it's respected, and it's a pleasure to sort of make sure that people are working as safe as we possibly can. And I'm not an expert in every field, granted. So actually, what I will do is have that dialogue with the individuals, tell me how this thing can be safer, and then I'll look at, well, yeah, for me it doesn't sound safe because of X, Y, and Z. So let's put something else in place. And together we work into it. So as much as I've got a wide experience of things, I don't know everything, but I will certainly work with the individuals.
And you don't necessarily know the job role, and you don't know.
No, absolutely. Yeah. There's a very large organisation which I work with, and actually I audit their health and safety people, which is fun. It's real fun because I go in there. At first, there was a lot of resilience, and when I went in there, I was like, well, this needs doing, this needs doing, this needs doing. And what we actually come up with after 3 or 4 visits was they're familiar with their surroundings. So they'll walk over that gap or walk over that damaged slab, think nothing of it. Whereas I come and say that's a problem for someone walking through with a disability. They go, "Do you know what? I've walked over that every time. You're right. We need to get that fixed." And they now, look forward to my visits.
Yeah. And look out for that sort of thing in the future.
Yeah. So it's there not to take anyone's work away.
Yeah. So looking at the cost of all this, I guess, you don't have to go into the exact figures, but you obviously mentioned you can work on a retainer or you can do a project, I guess. And of course, as you've done for us recently, the first aid training itself. But in terms of it, if you're again that fictional small business between 5 and 10, how much money do you have to throw at this a year? And I know how long's a bit of string, but I mean, it is the reason everybody hates this subject is because it's costly.
Well, it's certainly far cheaper than employing someone. That's a definite.
Yeah, exactly.
The retainer packages start from as little as £90 a month, and that will give us everything to make you compliant. And then we if you need in an organisation like we've got here, we've got lovely surroundings and everything. Whatever the fire risk assessment of the building size, we don't put any less on it. We'll divide the figure by 12 months, add that to the retainer. So the packages can be tailored to whatever the needs are, as much or as little as you need. With our full packages of fire risk assessment, health and safety auditing, we throw in training packages. We don't charge any extra for that because we want to build that relationship with you, and we make sure that there's enough people on a yearly basis to cover that. So we believe it's very affordable. It's something which once we start working with you, you'll hopefully get the benefit of what we do quickly. You may even win some contracts. We do lots of help with people who are going through things like CHAS, construction line, safer contractor, the SSIP schemes, and this is where having it all in your head doesn't work, because to have that, it's all got to be written down. So we'll work with people to develop policies, develop procedures, safe working practices, get your training matrices in place and get the packages up and running. So all that can be done, and we can get a sort of application through fairly quickly. And what the plus point with us as well is you get to nominate us as your health and safety consultants under your company.
Wasn't us, it was him.
Absolutely. But then hopefully that will then put some pressure off of you if something really happened. And we had something happen recently on a building site, and I had to do a very quick evacuation. We spoke to people, got everyone doing what they needed to do. All I was hoping to do was a health and safety audit, and unfortunately there's a gas main caught, but it was unlocated, so it's very difficult to track and locate plastic pipes. But actually the whole process, as stressful as it was the fire brigade said it was well managed, which partly down to myself, but it's also to do with the others as well. So as soon as we knew what happened, it's a case of one person got on the phone, I'm going to start evacuation residents. Everyone got told what to do, and then we've all got together, and then we've looked at how could this have been prevented? What did we do to stop it from ever happening again? And also, was everyone, as we'd already got that in place anyway under CDM management, which we do, making sure that everyone had their tickets, they were in date, was dug as safely as possible. There's no reason this should have happened, but accidents happen, and you can put everything in place as best as you can. It's just one of those things, unfortunately, but it was dealt with, contained, and within a few hours, Cadence thankfully come out there, shut everything up. It wasn't too bad, and everyone went home, but everyone was safe. No one get injured.
Yeah. So in terms of your business, how are you getting new clients? You mentioned partnerships with other industries, I guess. But tell us a bit about how you're winning business, how you're keeping business.
Yeah, well, I mean, we keep business pretty well. We've got a 98% retention rate within our organisation, which is really, really good. And people we've lost, unfortunately, have actually gone out of business, we're sorry to say, not for any health and safety faults. It's just the economics we're in. And a lot in the building trade, it's a tough place to be at the moment. We get a lot of our work through word of mouth. That's I'll probably say the bulk of our work comes word of mouth. We love doing network events, meeting up with lovely people like yourself. And we find that just telling people our story and educating people on what we do, people tend to trust us fairly early on. And then before you know it, I get insurance brokers ring me up. I've got a client, this is what the score is, how can you help? So I offer them a questionnaire, they fill it out, I can quote pretty accurately off a questionnaire once I understand their business. And then it grows from there. As I say at the beginning, we do work with insurance underwriters. And people get to hear our name. We do a little bit on social media. This type of thing is a first. You've got me. You're the first person.
Well, there you go.
I'm a podcast virgin. Not anymore. But it's doing what I can to get out there. We do a fair bit on social media. We've got a great team supporting us on that. But it's being out and talking to people. And I would probably say a good 80% of our work is people referring what we do because they like what we do. They see the benefit, and it really works. We do a little bit of advertising. We get the odd bit from advertising, but I'd say the crux of what we do is definitely word of mouth and testimonials. Got some wonderful people that say some very kind stuff, which I'm very grateful on. But as a result of that, people tend to give us a go and then hopefully like us. Yeah.
I always like to ask about technology, if it's affected your industry over the last few years or if it's likely to in the future.
I love technology.
Yeah, I just can't. I mean, from an outsider, I can't see that it's going to massively shift your business. But
no, hopefully
I guess things like reporting is done slicker, and the admin side of it is probably
absolutely.
easier,
I mean, for me personally, technology helps with sort of I can dictate a lot of stuff, and then we can put that into our reports. We have lots of toys and gadgets which we prod and poke things to check that they're fire compliant or whatever. We check for sound levels, lighting levels and things like that. So there's technology there that we can use. Funny, really, really funny you say that. So I'll walk around a building dictating as I'm walking around, getting as much information as I can. The stuff that Linda does, actually, she can't do that. So under regulatory conditions, she wouldn't be able to actually use a dictaphone to record anything because of the conversations that could be had. So a lot of her stuff has to be written down in a format that is very confidential and no one could get a hold of. So it's very difficult because I often try and work out ways I can make her her side of the business for streamline, but it's a really difficult time to do it. But for me, more toys the better. Things like drones could be used, looking at roof lines, if we've got problems with roofs, are they compliant? Is there issues with roofs? Or if even if a roofer, asks me for some health and safety advice, rather than me putting my health and safety at risk by going up to a roof, sending a drone up to look at what they're talking about. They're the technologies where I could easily use that type of technology to help me. Obviously, I've got tablets, which we try and keep digital with those. So I use as very little physical paper as possible. Everything's digital. I write on a tablet. I dictate to the tablet and to my phone.
In fact, I try and keep as paperless as possible, but the first time I've used the printer in there in over a year was to print out my first aid certificate.
Oh, really? Yeah,
unfortunately, it still sits on the printer, but I printed it out. So
we'll get it in here one day. That's brilliant. But it is important technology. Actually, I know with these glasses, you're a fan of the Meta glasses. For me, looking forward in time, because I'm a glasses wearer, having something like that when I've got my tablet, just to say, well, I'll take a picture of that, it would save time. So when you're thinking of saving time and everything else for what you do, things like that can really work out quite beneficial.
I certainly use them all the time if I'm doing a survey, because I'm not massively techie, but if I can just video what I'm seeing, show it to our engineers, they can say, yes, that needs this, that's,
Exactly.
And yes, I do it all the time. If I'm on site, I'll just look around like this, explain what I'm seeing, so verbalise what I'm seeing. Always in mind that the person seeing it is going to want to know what that bit is there, and it is phenomenal. It's so much better than walking around with your phone. Yeah, it's the same thing, but it's just one less thing to carry.
Absolutely,
you almost forget it's there. And but one clever thing you can do, again, I'm not wearing them at the moment, but you can actually stream a call so they can see what you're seeing. So if you've got a problem when you're on site, I can ring an engineer and say, look, here's the problem, and they can see what I'm seeing, and they can say, well, take that wire out of there and put it in there, it's live, and it's incredible.
That could easily be something which we could work with, that sort of technology to sort of to help us out there.
It's all excuses to buy these gadgets.
Absolutely, yeah. My best friend on the side.
I want to hear some of your trials and tribulations, I suppose. What's been the challenges? What's been the successes? What
Challenges is a good one. Challenges, landlords.
Yeah,
I'd probably say landlords is one of my biggest challenges, because business owners tend to rent their premises. And with the best will in the world, they will always try and do the best they can in the building. But the landlord may be reluctant to do it. And as a result of that, the cost implications are very high for the business owner. And if they're reasonably new in business, finances may not be there. So trying to be compliant is hard. I've been with organisations that literally I've said to them, this building should have been made ready with all these, at least the fire side of things, labelling things like asbestos, which needs to be done, having fire doors in the building. All this should be done in the building by a landlord before an organisation comes to work there, to make sure from day one they're safe. And I find that a challenge sometimes, hugely.
But with I'm a landlord, so in their defence, these are things that are constantly changing, and the building might have been there for 30, 40, 100 years, and it's from their angle frustrating that these things change. Someone I think we both know, built this beautiful HMO 6-bed, thought he'd done everything by the book, and he did only 4 or 5 years ago. And then something changed, and now he needs a fire suppression system, which is thousands of pounds.
Absolutely.
It's straight away wipes out any money he's earned from the project.
I think for me, so I think obviously like yourself, a reputable landlord, you would see it would probably need to be done, and would try and make some realms. And this is where I say what I like to work with people. But I find I get a lot of landlords who would just say, no, it's down to the tenant. Down to the tenant. And I think when the property's been left empty for a period of time, and then the new tenants come, then I know it does cost money, but to put someone, just for example, a fire alarm system would be nice to have in a building. And I know you'd probably go, well, I've got fire alarms, so I'm okay. But I do go to buildings and there's no fire alarms at all.
I think that's the difference. Obviously, if they're going to use an agent, the chances are they're going to be doing most things properly anyway. It's those type that I guess don't and want to do things on the cheap or yeah. But in terms of the business challenges, tough times, COVID, I presume was difficult for Linda anyway at that point.
I mean, actually, what Linda did, which was, that's how amazing she is, actually. So we've done a lot of work with insurance underwriter. As COVID started, I ended up in this lovely boot, didn't do my image any good whatsoever. She actually put to them a way of still doing what she'd done to offer support remotely. And it was unheard of back then to do it remotely because everything had to be in person. And she actually managed to change their procedure. And bearing in mind, this company is an international company. She changed the whole process of what they did so that everyone could still work. And to this day, it came as an idea. Why don't we try doing X, Y, and Z remotely? Because care homes are still open, and they went through a heck of a tough time. They needed that support. And thanks to the likes of Linda, she was able to put something in place where that support was still there, where everyone else had been told, go home, you're furloughed. It's like, I don't want to be furloughed. I want to still offer support, offer a product where with these people that have to work are supported. And she put that in place. And a lot of her colleagues that do that same support started being rolled into that project. And I take my hat off to her. I think she's an amazing person to come up with that idea. And throughout the whole of COVID, she was working with, which was at the time, National Health England and the likes, sort of liaising with them to sort of say, actually, do you know what? You can have people in the premises. You can have people sleeping over because they're all in their own bubble, so they can still work and support those people. She done loads. I mean, she was just an absolute godsend to have working for you at the time because she could just keep everything, all the cogs going. As well. I was just doing the typing at the time. I was going, this is great.
Presumably that's the success as well. Then I guess that's the. Unless there's anything else stand out, a big client you took on, or
we've had a few big clients. I mean, there's a big Norfolk client who, as I say, we go in there and support their health and safety, and that was great. And the reason why it's so great is because I actually got that in fairly early days of me going into this as a new organisation, and I had my concerns at what could I do for someone who's already doing the job, and it turns out a lot. To a point where I've had some amazing feedback saying how much they appreciate the fact that even though they had 12 health and safety people in this organisation, that's how big they are, they still valued what I had to say, and that meant a lot to me. One, I felt like I got it right, and we'd put things in place, and they've been around the table battling things out, couldn't work it out, and I think it is literally, I've not seen this before. What about that?
Just an idea. Outside fresh pair of eyes.
Outside fresh pair of eyes, absolutely. I've been involved with nuclear companies. I am not a nuclear any way, shape or sense person, but they just found a couple of ideas. Could this happen? To them to say, actually, we'll look at it, and that's it. I won't take anything like that on because out of my field, but working with people that their field is there just to go, what would you do on, just forget it's nuclear, on a health and safety based issue, what do you think? And for me to come up with an idea that go, there's a feasibility in there, we might have to tweak X, Y and Z, but yes, we could look at that avenue. And they've been big wins for me as far as I'm concerned.
And in terms of personal life, do you both manage to sort of switch off or have a bit of a work-life balance?
Well, we can walk the dogs and meet the grandchildren and the children every single week. We might still talk a bit about work. We try and switch off. We're very, very family orientated. Absolutely, we can't not see them weekly, and we do as much as we can. But we are always on call. We don't switch our phones off for clients. The family really respect that well. I've got an amazing family, and they do respect it. In fact, I've even had one of my clients is my son-in-law. So, it can't be that bad. But even some of the grandchildren do bits and pieces where we've talked about health and safety. I've had the youngest ones doing CPR. Because it's little useful playing skills that could actually help someone.
Yeah.
So we do all sorts of bits and pieces to keep it fresh.
In terms of the work-life balance, do you have a cut-off like away from the
No,
it's quite flexible, fluid.
It's
but do
flexible.
you have some time off?
We try. We've got a holiday booked this month.
Oh, there you go.
Whether we go on, that's another matter. But there we go.
And next 5 years, are you looking ahead? Are you ever going to take anyone else on, or do you want to keep it deliberately at this level?
I think both Linda and I will struggle letting go because we're passionate on what we do. We do want to expand. We want to bring a few people into the business. I don't want to get too big because I don't want it to be what I deliberately try to build against in our way. But I'd like to get to a point where nobody's getting any younger. We're getting to a point where we will have to possibly slow down a bit, although for any retained people out there, then that's not going to happen. We'll still be with you. But there'll be certain tasks, that we may hand over, bring some people in there. I want to reach out to more people, maybe having a sales team in there that can reach out and do that part of it so we can offer more, wonderful services to people out there and keep them compliant and safe.
Yeah, great. And who are you looking for? Who can we connect you with?
Who can you connect me with? Oh, wow. The easy one is small businesses with 5 or more people, but I don't want to lose sight that anyone under 5, we can obviously help a lot. But anyone who has office or premises, they're probably so caught up in their business that the health and safety, not deliberately, but might take a bit of a back seat. Anyone that hasn't done a fire drill in the last 12 months, anyone that hasn't heard that fire alarm being tested on a regular basis, they're the people that I want to get in to speak to. And any care home, Linda's she will give you so much support and help. You'll just wonder how you ever worked without her before. So I think that's who I'm after. Anyone that's not heard that ringing bell, someone's testing the fire alarm, someone's had an incident that they go, oh God, this was a close call. I think they're the people that I want to go in and sort of say to them, do you know what? Let's have a little look. What could we do? Let's look at that whole thing, document it down digitally, and work out how it is that we can make sure that never happens again.
Anyone specific? Any company you just wanted to get into forever and just haven't made it?
Well, I just got into one of the companies that that was the case. Bread Sauce is a company. I work with Taste Buds Collective, and Bread Sauce is a company that I've heard it could be something I could work with. But I love working with likes of accountants and people, only because they have vast offices. So the larger accountancy services, banks would be a good one, because banks is a very interesting one, because lots of people now have these remote banking hubs, and I'd love to see how they manage their health and safety on that, because they're not the last people in necessarily. Yeah, true. So any remote working type things would be really, really good. Construction industry for me is almost I can help them in many ways and share. But I think really to get into the industries where premises are a part of it will definitely be the key. There's some great organisations out there. We don't have to cost the earth, but we'll certainly keep them safe and healthy.
Dave, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you
very much. It's been a pleasure.
The Norfolk Business Show with Danny Snelling. Sponsored by MT Comms.
Just a quick word from me. Absolutely thrilled with the response and feedback we've had so far. It really has been so positive. We're going to continue with it. I do just need to ask you all, please, just to take that 1 second to click the subscribe, like, follow button, share them. Just do something for me, because we're never going to be monetized. We're not going to make money from this show, and that's not our intention. We're a local Norfolk show, so we're never going to get those worldwide viewing figures that need to monetize channels. It's not about that. We genuinely are just trying to give back to the business community in Norfolk. So please do that favour for me. It will just increase the visibility of those guests we have on the show, so they get more impact from it. And who knows, if you're a future guest, then you'll get the benefit of that as well. So please do that for me. Obviously, we're sponsoring it from MT Comms. Please do keep us in mind if we can help with anything IT related, Office 365, support, cybersecurity, 365, that sort of thing. We also do telecoms, mobile, CCTV. There's loads of stuff we do. Just reach out to us and ask us if you can help with anything. Thank you, guys.